Good. So welcome everybody, and it's really lovely to see you at, this is actually the second of our Song in the City live online events. If you didn't know, I'm Gavin Roberts, the Artistic Director of Song in the City Charity Trust, and I can see in the audience some of our lovely trustees. So today's session is all about our Voices of London project, and commissioning new work is a really big part of what we do at Song in the City. And I'm sure lots of you will remember our various events surrounding our very first commission, Voices of London. And today is a chance just to reflect back on that project and to meet some of these wonderful characters that were involved in that. So tonight we have two singers, Beth Lynch and Nick Allen, and four composers, Joseph Atkins, James Lark, Graham Ross, and Raymond. And we've got Ken Blair and also Will Anderson from BMP Recordings, and wonderful producer and friend of mine, Jonathan Lee. So perhaps could I start with perhaps Beth? Would you mind just introducing yourself?
Unmute myself. Hi. Hi, I'm Beth, or officially Elizabeth, in my professional capacity, I suppose. And yeah, I'm a singer. Was lucky enough to be involved in this amazing project. It was so nice to have a little preview of that video that you sent through, Gavin, because it was such a trip down memory lane. And yeah, so since the project, I did a bit more study at the Guildhall for a bit, and then just sort of worked as a freelance singer. I did a couple of seasons at Garsington Opera, a couple of seasons at Glyndebourne. Last year made a debut at E&O, did a few sort of recitals and concerts and just all the usual kind of freelance opera singer stuff. And I went to the National Opera Studio for a little bit last year. And then lockdown happened and I became a primary school teacher.
You have a wonderful one, don't you, at home?
Yeah, I have a little 6-year-old who is brilliant, but you know, required quite a lot of entertaining for 3 months in our little London dwelling, which has been in equal measures brilliant and lovely, and so lucky to have the time to sort of spend together, and also trying and exhausting, and I've had to relearn my times tables and all those things that were in the back of my head somewhere. But it's been lovely, and it has been lovely, and we've been teaching him the piano actually, so that's been our sort of way of keeping music alive in our house. But just missing live music, and actually I didn't really realize, you know, we took it for granted so much. Live music was such a part of our life. Well, I took it for granted that live music has just always been there and always been part of my life. And since I was about 6, I've been making, you know, church choir, and it's not until it's taken away from you all of a sudden that you suddenly go, actually, this is kind of so much of your identity is tied up in music and performing, and to have your voice taken away is a little bit disarming, really.
Yeah. How have you been using your voice? Do you use your voice at all with your son? Do you do anything?
He really hates it when I sing.
No.
But I've been trying to keep up practice every day, just to try and keep it ticking over. Sort of trying.
And is he a budding tenor yet, or not yet? No.
No, I think the piano's been he's really enjoyed
Great.
the piano, which has been really cool to see actually. And actually, what's been really amazing is seeing the impact his sort of homeschooling has had on his piano and vice versa. So, you know, quite often if he's sat at the chair and we've been doing a load of math or whatever, stick him on the piano for 10 minutes and he honestly, it's incredible to see his concentration suddenly change when he comes back to doing his sort of written work or whatever. He just relaxes, he focuses, he's just all the things that people say about how important music is in small children and or anyone.
Yeah.
has been like epitomised in this one room that I'm in just now.
Oh, fantastic.
Been
Yeah.
really cool to see, really cool to see.
Good. Well, thank you, Beth. It's lovely to hear from you and see you, and more of you and this project a bit later. Before I move on to Nick, I was just going to say I should have introduced our wonderful patron, Sarah Walker, who I was going to talk to a little bit later, perhaps. But she's introduced herself in the chat and says, "Hello, everybody. I am Sarah Walker, and the best way to introduce myself is to quote my Twitter tag: amazing mezzo, lapsed violinist and cellist." Multicoloured hair, which I think you can see in her picture here. Hates cooking, loves eating, clothes, and Schubert, and not necessarily in that order. I'm probably mysteriously silent tonight. That's fine. But fascinated and excited to see you all again. So more perhaps from Sarah in a little bit. But could I come on to Nick then? Because I know Nick's also a parent who's just been dealing with music parenting in lockdown as well.
Having to relearn everything that I've done over the last few years. Yes, hi, I'm Nick. Nice to see everybody. Pre-COVID, I didn't have a beard, and my main project has been working on that over the last few months. It was amazing to be involved with this. I was lucky enough to be involved in the first concert that we did of this piece, this work, this cycle, and then also to be involved in the recording as well. And it feels like a long time ago now. It's lovely to see. It's lovely to see you. And then, yeah, I had what felt like a really good break for me coming this summer, which unfortunately is not going to happen now. I was covering Nemorino in L'Elysée d'Amore at Longborough, and that was what I had hoped would be a real step in a positive direction after a few seasons of doing chorus with Opera Holland Park. And that may or may not happen in the future, but our focus, my focus as a family, everybody here, we're very much in a similar boat to Elizabeth, with every day being a different kind of challenge to what we might have envisaged earlier on this year.
And do you think there might be any signs of that happening again? Have you heard any green shoots about opera productions starting again?
No. I think it's tough when so many seasons are planned so far in advance that there's been no word on that. And if I'm honest, if there were to be good news, I would see it only as a bonus, as a big bonus. But I'm not counting on that being something that might come back round. But that's not to say that other things like that won't be. It's we've all had this such a strange experience, as Beth said, where what we do has been taken away from us, and it was enlightening for me. I don't know what the word is. It was lovely, in fact, for me when I had a few moments, well, even I think it was a few hours at home while Philippa took the kids out and just allowed me to be at home by myself for a bit, and without even thinking about it, having experienced the same as Beth with my children hating my singing, the first thing that I did when they left the house, without having planned this at all, was to sing. And that is keeping me going. That feeling that not only do I love this, I need this, and it's not just me that feels this way. It's all of you here. Whatever happens, we will need live theatre, we'll need live music, and that need will not go away.
Yeah, albeit perhaps in a slightly different format in the future. Yeah. Well, it's really lovely to see you, and yeah, and more from you later, I'm sure. Perhaps I should come to some composers in no particular order. Who shall I pick on first? I think we should go to Raymond Ray, because Ray. Well, I think I've known all of you composers for a very long time, but Ray and I first met at the Guildhall School, didn't we?
Yeah, Sarah actually.
Yeah.
I think we did the Creative Voices in Guildhall. That's how we met. So I'm a composer, as Kevin said, and So pre-lockdown, I was just starting to write an orchestra piece that I was commissioned at Christmas time. So I was actually quite lucky because the lockdown, through the whole lockdown period, I literally just stay at home 7 days a week, composing like mad, because the deadline was literally in June, and I wasn't quite sure whether I was able to do it without the lockdown. And then suddenly it's like, oh my god, I got nothing else to do. So I just pretty much finished the piece about 3 weeks early.
Gosh,
So,
because you think perhaps lockdown would be a good time for composers to get going with things.
I think, I mean, for me, it was just a good opportunity. I don't think that if I wasn't about to write something, I think it'd be quite daunting for me to just to find projects to do. But I only just learned it today that the piece is supposed to be premiered in September in Hong Kong. With the situation in Hong Kong, plus they have new cases of COVID-19. So they wasn't quite sure whether it's going to be going ahead. So I got an email from them today to say that they should be going ahead, but they have to push the concert a week earlier. And then they have a 2 weeks quarantine as well. So I will be stuck in the hotel room, literally in the hotel room for 2 weeks.
Oh, great!
They would tag me, so I can't escape. So it's going to be interesting if I do go. So after the lockdown, I got a few projects that I will do, but I'm not quite sure what will happen next year. So,
gosh, big uncertainties, but great that you've been able to get ahead with that writing. And also thank you for we heard you on Radio 3 on Sunday morning, in fact with 2 of the songs from the Voices of London project.
Yes, with Beth is on the radio. It was quite nice. It was good. I think it's quite nice. I think Martin Hanley just came across them, and he asked me through the producer about 2 weeks in advance to say that, do you have anything, and he particularly mentioned the song cycle. He must have, was it at the premiere? I'm not quite sure. And
I think so. No.
Yeah, he mentioned Songs in the City. I said, oh yes, of course. So that's why I get the producer in touch with you to get the recording. So,
well, thank you for that. Anyway, it's lovely to see you. And I did bump into you, of course, a couple of weeks ago outside the Opera House of all places. So great. Anyway, more from you later. And perhaps I could come to Graham. Would you mind saying hello?
Hi everyone, nice to see you. I'm Graham. So I wrote 2 songs as well for this wonderful project back in 2012, I think it was. A setting of Seamus Heaney and the setting of a wonderful poem by Carol Ann Duffy called Translating the English, which I chose to set as a kind of cabaret style song. And I really enjoyed writing it. These amazing words that suddenly came to life. I still think regularly of this amazing phrase that Carol Ann Duffy wrote called "Fish and Chips and the Official Secrets Act." I think it's one of the most brilliant sentences that's ever been written as a poem. So that's where I first got involved in this project, and it's been lovely to see and hear that amazing recording that Gavin put together. And since then, I divide my time between composing and also conducting, and probably I do slightly more conducting than I do composing. A lot of that is through my role as director of music at Clare College in Cambridge University. So part of my lockdown, or a large part of my lockdown, has been trying to be a director of music remotely with all of my students scattered around the world, and with a huge amount of screen time, more screen time than any musician really ever wants, if I'm being brutally honest, though this is lovely to see you all, and lots of examining and recitals and all those kind of things which had to take place online, and we had to rewrite university syllabuses and the like. The academic term is now finished. And so we're now in what I suppose is meant to be a summer vacation, though it feels remarkably similar to what the lockdown term felt like.
Oh, sorry. It sounds like you need a holiday after all that. Yeah, I suppose. On our Zoom.
Yeah, well, I think one thing you can say for musicians around the world is that I think everyone's been amazingly proactive and creative even in these extraordinary times. I was just listening before I came on here to that wonderful collaboration that you might have heard last week between the BBC Singers and the Danish National Vocal Ensemble, who did a kind of vocally, socially distant Sperminalium, the 40-part motet of Thomas Tallis, all recorded in their kitchens and living rooms, and then amazingly stitched together. And I've been doing some of that with my own choir, and obviously every single concert and tour and recording has been completely cancelled almost overnight. So I've been at home, and I've been able to do some writing, which is great. Like Ray, it's been actually rather nice not kind of gallivanting around the world and having some time to properly think and breathe and to write. I enjoy my cooking, but I think I'm a bit bored of it now on day 125 or whatever we're on. And I've had a chance to do some housework that I've been putting off for the last 8 years. So our front door is finally being stripped of paint, which is a nice thing for me to see.
Oh. I just wanted to ask, what's the future looking like for Clare Choir and next term? Are there plans to do stuff?
We're like everyone. We're very much dependent on government advice, and there's some colleagues of ours, a wonderful guy called Declan Costello, who's an ENT specialist, who's been looking very carefully at the science of singers and of musicians, particularly wind players, and what that means in terms of emission of particles and the like. And I think the government is rightly very reliant on that information, which I think is why it's been so slow to move into a better stage. So yeah, I think I'm on my 45th cancelled concert now. So I'm hopeful that there might be an email that comes in that feels like an engagement rather than a cancellation. But for the time being, I'll just keep making tartan and expanding my waistline. So
I think we're all with you on that one. Yeah, it was lovely to see you. Thank you very much. I'm going to move on. I'm going to James. Hello.
Hello. Yes, my name is James Lark, and it has been 4 months since my last haircut. And I'm currently in a house where the most flattering lighting occurs at about 8 o'clock in the morning. So currently, as you can see, the shadows are descending, and I'm taking on a more kind of vampiric style. That's just what happens. So yeah, before lockdown, I was working on a musical, which it's been the thing to go to on my desk when I haven't had a deadline or a commission to deal with. I'm fortunate in that I've had a lot of commissions, and so it's taken a very long time to finish this musical, but several workshops and the occasional tryout we've done a couple of loose performances have resulted in a piece that I'm very proud of. It's called Infants, and it's set in an infant school. We ran a very successful crowdfunding campaign in February. The cast were all ready and rehearsing, and we had a theatre booked for May. And you can imagine the punchline, which is that I've got a house full of posters and flyers, which are completely useless. So if anyone wants a souvenir poster for a show that never happened, I have many. So yeah, lockdown really did come at a particularly poor time as far as I was concerned. Though I suppose the positive to take from it is that the support from the people who did give us money towards the May performance has been ongoing. We did manage to put together a sort of online performance, not as an alternative, but as an interim measure to say thank you to the people who supported us, and with the commitment to do something as soon as we're able. When that will be remains a bit of an unknown. The other thing I've been doing sorry, say again, Gavin?
Certainly the bits I saw of your infant musical were absolutely fantastic.
Well, I was really pleased with how it came across online, and the response was incredible. And I think that if we can get that kind of response to a thing that is just a kind of an online alternative, it's a good sign. And I wouldn't have wanted the online thing to in any way have been an equivalent or to have tried to replicate what we're going to do on stage. Partly because I think it's impossible, but also because I feel that it's a very theatrical piece that needs to be seen on stage, and we want to kind of save ourselves for that.
Yeah. That said, I feel like we're all learning lots of new skills, aren't we? Video editing and sound recording and things from home, and
Yeah, yes, and I suppose I'm also consolidating skills which I've sort of half learned in the past, and it's been an opportunity to do that. But I mean, the other thing I've been doing is teaching quite intensely in my other job, which is Director of Music at Westminster Abbey Choir School, where we've been running a pretty full curriculum. And the last few weeks have been complete madness because we decided that we would do what we normally do at the end of the summer term, which is a school play, incorporating lots of music and dance and acting, and really the intention was to try and give them some of the experience they would have had if they were in school. But the sheer amount of effort to even just to get video material in from all these different houses across the country, let alone then tying them together in a way that made any kind of sense. The effort that you have to put into that sort of is worth it if there's an educational value, I think. But it's not remotely equivalent to the effort you put into a kind of a product on stage in real life. So I think the sooner we can get back to something like that, the better.
So you sound like you need a holiday as well,
Yes.
post-lockdown. Well, it's really lovely to see you.
Nice to see you.
And I'm feeling exhausted listening to these busy lockdown stories. So, Joe, please tell us that you've been relaxing and...
Well, I mean, I haven't been half as busy by the sound of things as everybody else, that's for sure. The lockdown's been a very, very, very strange experience. I mean, like everybody else we've spoken to, I had a summer and an autumn full of bookings, mixture of festival bookings. I was co-writing a musical for British Youth Music Theatre in August, and all of that has disappeared. I suppose I probably, and not having a full-time teaching job at the same time, I think I've experienced that thing that a lot of other artists have talked about very eloquently, and far more eloquently than I'm about to speak about. That feeling of having all this time suddenly available to you, but actually not necessarily knowing how to use it in the most kind of creatively fulfilling way, that sense of kind of grieving for what's lost, and therefore now's not the time to write a symphony, even though the time is available and abundantly available. But having said that, so yes, I should backtrack a little bit. My experience as a composer is largely working in the theatre at the moment, like James, and I've written a couple of community pieces for the Young Vic in the last year, and was involved in a joint commission from Opera North and Leeds Playhouse in 2018 for a piece about women on the front line in World War I. So a real kind of mix of styles and sort of crossover of discipline. But yes, so instead in lockdown, so I've got together with a great collaborator friend of mine, Jess Walker, who's a fabulous mezzo and writer, as well as being a professor in professional development at the Royal Academy of Music. And she and I were both due to be artists in residence at this year's Lichfield Festival. So what we have done is we put together, if you like, a lockdown concert, and rather spookily was able to hire out the currently empty Blackheath Halls. Wow. And film it with Leon Lopez, who's a wonderful filmmaker, cinematographer, and put together a concert mixture of our own music and French cabaret music in Jess's own translation that explores some of those preoccupations, those anxieties, those feelings of isolation, disenfranchisement, and so on. It's a jolly evening's entertainment, as you can imagine. That's going to be streamed as part of the kind of amazing work that Lichfield are doing online in lieu of a festival this year. So that's been the sort of main focus, I suppose, if you like, of the last sort of few weeks. That and desperately trying to move house on the domestic front, which has been very, very difficult, as you can imagine.
Yes.
So, yeah. But, keeping fingers crossed that my next booking, which is currently still in the diary and set to go in April of 2021, is still open. So there we are.
Yes, it's amazing to see how many creative projects are happening during this time, as Graham mentioned, and hearing about your projects, how when we're kind of have resources taken away from us, people get more creative somehow. And also that, as you say, we end up reflecting the time that we're living through with our art. Yeah, fascinating. It's really good to see you anyway. And I'm going to I'm going to move briefly on to Ken, who's a wonderful representative of BMP Recordings.
Hi, thank you for inviting me to this gathering. It's really lovely to be here. My colleague Will Anderson is also with us, and in terms of the Voices of London CD, I was the recording engineer and Will did the lion's share of the audio editing on it. I looked at the dates on the recording sheets and it was almost exactly 5 years to the day when we recorded that project. And we were very lucky, I suppose, listening to everybody else's stories. We were quite lucky with our projects going into lockdown because we finished a number of large projects just before we all had to go home. And we'd done all of the recordings of all of the piano pieces for the new ABRSM piano syllabus and all of the piano recordings for the Trinity piano syllabus. And we had also just completed a 10-year project to record all the piano works of Scriabin with Dmitry Alexeyev. And in February, we had a trip to Ireland, to Cork, to St. Finbarr's Cathedral, where we did a choir recording there. So some of these projects were still at editing stage when lockdown began, but we managed to complete them all by the 1st of April. At which point, Will and our placement student from Surrey University, Charlie, went on furlough leave and have been since. But Will's been using, I've been spending most of my time spring cleaning the stationery cupboard, but Will has been using his time fruitfully to teach himself about preparing virtual choir presentations for showing online. And one of the amazing things he did was to take a number of contributions from his own choir, the Linter Singers in Lincoln, and he managed to then place them inside a 3D space. So you're able to, well, either on your phone, you can move around the space just by moving your phone, or on a desktop computer, you can navigate around the scene using your mouse. And so when you turn away from one side of the room where the ladies are all singing to where the men are singing, the sound slightly changes, the balance automatically changes between the women and the men. So it's kind of immersive type experience. And so he's been doing quite a lot of that, and currently working on a project with the musical director at Leeds Cathedral to do a project for one of his choirs. So he's keeping busy. And coming out of lockdown, we have a couple of things happening. One that is pretty much imminent. We do work with a Baroque ensemble in Delaware in the United States. And they have a recital hall there, which they normally do a season through the winter and into the spring, but they're not able to have any concerts. So they've decided to plan a kind of digital season. So we've been working with their manager to try and teach them a little bit about sound engineering and video recording. And tomorrow we're sitting online with him. We've managed to set up a live, high quality audio line from their studio to our office, where we're going to listen to him as he gradually maneuvers the microphones into the right position on a historic harpsichord. Wow. And then we're going to do the same on on Tuesday next week for the video cameras. And then Thursday and Friday of next week, the New York-based harpsichordist Arthur Howes is coming to do three 30-minute recitals, which are going to be the start of their program for online presentation. So it's going to be a mix of recitals in their own hall, plus contributions from their other musicians from their homes, stitched together as a virtual performance, just to try and make it as varied as possible. And then we actually have a recording session planned for the end of August with the jazz pianist Nikki Isles. So we're looking forward to being back in the studio for that. Some details are still to be confirmed, but it looks like that's going to go ahead.
So it sounds almost as if you're coming into your own with this situation, because
I think, as others have said, it has made us think in different ways about what we do, and has made us be creative in some ways, and has taught us some new technological tricks which we can do. For example, being able to listen in real time at high quality to a studio on the other side of the Atlantic. So all very interesting.
Amazing, gosh, fantastic. And it's really great to see you again. And I'm sure we'll come back to you later to do questions to do with this project. John, can I come to you?
Yes, happily. So I'm Jonathan Lee. I produced the Voices of London album, which it does seem a long time ago, but perhaps a bit longer than 5 years.
Everything with John and I was a very long time ago, because John and I have known each other for, it's 23 years now or something, is it? Yeah.
It is. Well, that's even longer. A bit like my hair. So like Nick, I've been, well, I haven't been growing a beard, but like James, I've been growing my hair over lockdown, and I have been reminding myself of James Lark's musical Infants, on which I'm lucky enough to be the musical director. And I have also been expanding my waistline. So it's been quite an exciting lockdown. But other than that, I'm one of these people who has, I suppose, one of these portfolio career things. So I've been continuing my work as a music editor, and I've been teaching the piano and organ, believe it or not, online. And I've been doing a bit of the virtual choir stuff as well, which I don't love, but I do for necessity. And I suppose all the audio projects I've been involved in had finished, like Ken, before lockdown happened. So I was quite lucky in that respect. So that's basically what I've been doing with my lockdown, and very much hoping that once all this is over, that I can get back to some good playing, some good performing, some good studios, and maybe a bit less of the music editing, which is not my favourite job to be doing, but it's fun sometimes.
Gosh, well, certainly all the many strings to your bow are coming in handy now, aren't they? I suppose, and you're not just relying on one profession to keep you afloat.
Yeah, I've been very lucky. Certainly, that's the case.
And very busy. Lots of screen time as well with all that, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it's quite tiring. Even more tiring than recording, surprisingly.
Yeah, well, it's really lovely to see you, and and I think I've now introduced all the main players, and so what I wanted to do next was, instead of me talking about what the project was, I'm going to show you a little video. So I hope this works, because it involves me screen sharing, and it's just going to take you down memory lane about the Voices of London, how it all started, and then through the recording, right through to where we launched the recording at a performance at the Guildhall School. Anyway, I'll stop talking and play it to you.
I do not at all like that city. All sorts of men crowd together from every country. I wander through each charted street.
Welcome to my country, my country, my country. Welcome to my country.
In million-voiced London,
the night we took the underground to Covent Garden, so deeper into it.
To kill ye, come to bill ye, come to take your eyes. I am the stones, the bones, the traffic cones, the aches and pains, the pissed up, shagged out, manky brains.
I am what remains in the
they preach.
Your money has never been full, she declares, since last time we parted at Wapping Stairs, when I saw.
So we at Song in the City are recording a new song cycle which we commissioned in 2012 called Voices of London, which is songs by 4 different composers: Raymond, Graham Ross, James Lark and Joseph Atkins. We're using 4 singers, alumni and current senior students at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama, and me on the piano, Gavin Roberts. This piece is a celebration of London. You'll hear the different sounds of London, the people's voices of London, and even one of the songs is called If London Could Speak. You hear London speaking for itself.
Until you're single.
We thought it was important to record this so that we have something at Song in the City that represents something of what we do and celebrates the environment in which we live, as well as gets the work of these talented composers out there and talented singers, and so it's heard by a wider audience.
Then we'll carry on. Excellent. Good. Sounds brilliant.
A great and gallant city, for the streets are paved with gold and all the folks are witty.
In London, I never know what I'd be at, enraptured with this and enchanted by that, enraptured with this and enchanted by that. I'm wild with the sweets of variety's plan, and a nightingale sang in Berkeley Square. I know 'cause I was there that night in Berkeley Square.
Ah, lovely. I'm feeling all gooey watching that. That's so nice. And seeing that last bit, we had such fun at the CD launch when we did it. And always, as I've worked with the wonderful Dinah Stabb several times at Song in the City, who's always been so wonderful with actors and singers that we work with, transformed actually the songs from the project almost into Voices of London, the musical. Dinah's there. I think you are there, aren't you, Dinah, somewhere? Sorry to pick on you.
No, I'm here, and I found it so moving to listen to the composers and the singers talking about the work they did before I ever encountered the material. But what I loved was that in that performance, everything was embodied and created, and it really felt like we were making tangible and really we could taste London in it. And I just loved doing it, and I don't know how we managed it in such a short time, but we did. And thank you to the singers too, because you just went, okay, yeah, I can do this. I go like, go there, sing whilst you're walking this way or going that way, and everybody just embraced the whole idea of making the songs alive and real in the space. So I love doing it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for everything you did, because Dinah has this amazing way of waving a magic wand over a room and then making everybody somehow collaborate together so brilliantly. And I think we even used some wonderful actors from that. They were the trainee actors, weren't they, for PAC?
Yeah, they were. They weren't even people on the Guildhall proper acting course. They were doing a 3-month preparation thing, and they were 18 and 19. They were really young, and I just said, would you mind coming and making this show happen in the space? And they just went yes, and they rehearsed, and they loved being it, and they just brought their energy and their youth to the whole project. So yeah, it was fantastic that they could do that.
That was often our way of just grabbing people in corridors at Guildhall and saying, just come on, join us. And we had fun. Interesting watching that whole story was that if I rewind back to the very beginning of the project, which is probably back in 2012, I think we forgot all those wonderful dinners, composers that we had together, eating and drinking a huge amount, sifting through London poems. And how was it for any of you composers watching back that process? Joe, I can see Joe's nodding and smiling.
Yes, I was going to say that's probably the best bit, those dinners. As you mentioned that, I think a very, very happy memory indeed. And I think that was the thing that was so kind of unique about this project and so wonderful about it, is that we all came into it as great mates in the first instance. And, you know, as composers, it's such a solitary occupation most of the time. And, you know, as a consequence of getting together and as you say, kind of pouring over, you know, London poetry, there was a real sense of collaboration, so that even when it came to that point where we all had to go home to our respective pianos and get the old manuscript out, there was that sense of having, you know, the kind of support of other three composers and your good self and the wonderful performers are kind of on our shoulders, kind of taking our hands and taking us through it. It was really, really happy experience, and you know, one that doesn't come across very often. You know, I wish more commissions were like that.
Yes, something nice about watching it sort of on that video, that how it grew from those initial discussions to that event when we you know, sort of embodied it in the space like that. And I think I've got plans to resurrect some of those songs. I'm not going to let them die, and I think there might be revisiting of them post pandemic. Any other Beth, perhaps, how was that to watch back over that project?
Oh, it was just so nice. It was such a lovely project. I'm really proud of that disc. And yeah, it was just lovely.
Some lovely photos of you and Jen in that those final scenes, having great fun.
And like you said, the event at the end, to sort of bring it to even more to life, in a kind of bring drama to it in a way that's like another level on top of the sort of the drama that we already created on the disc. I guess the thing for me was the pieces that we just said, that, you know, it's a solitary thing being a composer, but it's also it's rare that we get to sort of sing something that doesn't already stand on the shoulders of someone else who's come before you, and to be able to sing sort of new music and fresh music, and really make it your own, and really decide what it's saying or what it's doing, or what you and your composer want it to say as a sort of collaboration, is just something that we so rarely get the chance to do, and is just so important going forward, you know, with fresh things to say, particularly after pandemic.
How was it for you, you know, recording these songs and then performing them when you got to meet, you sang Ray's songs, didn't you, and Joe's song? How was it like having them in the room with you?
Really cool, really amazing. When do you ever get a chance to sort of go like, oh, actually, could we just, or how what did you mean when you wrote that, or can I just ask you about this, or can we maybe tweak that bit, or, you know, all of the things that you don't, the questions that you have to kind of decide for, or the answers that you have to decide for yourself normally, is a much more sort of collaborative experience, having a composer with you who's written something there, and it's live and it's relevant and it's immediate, and that's really, really special.
Fantastic.
Could I reciprocate to that as well, and say that as well as I have also happy memories of meeting with the composers and those talks, but actually the collaboration with the singers all the way through the process, right through to that kind of stage performance, was one of the things that made this such a satisfying process, and one that felt like it rightly took up quite a lot of time. You know, it wasn't just a chat and then off we went and wrote something and handed it over. All the way through, there were lots of people plugged into that, and that, as Joe says, it's so unusual as a composer to get to do something that feels that collaborative, and I feel that the success of the cycle and the various guises in which it has seen the light of day is all to do with that.
How was it for you as well? Writing a cycle with 3 other composers.
Well, my favourite bit of composing, I think, is the bit before I actually have to do any work, where I'm planning. So I mean, I think we could have done some more dinners actually, and I'd been very happy to spread that part of the process out over a few more years. But yeah, really enjoyable, and I think it's there's a point where you have to go off and it has to become, it's your job to put the blobs on the page. But one of the things I thought when I listened back to the cycle, which I dutifully did earlier today, was just how cohesive it is as a complete work. I mean, it really works not just as a collection of songs, but as a dramatic shape. I think that's one of the reasons why it worked on stage so well. It feels like it's got a really tight dramatic structure, and that's all to do with the discussions we had, and maybe a little bit of, there's some alchemy as well. There are some things in there which I know for a fact we didn't plan. They just happened to really work well together. And that's part of the magic as well.
There's a way in which there's a whole range of texts from the 12th century right up to the present day. I know you set Simon Monnery, and in a way that when we look around London and we see it around us, I always feel like, oh, actually I learned something about my surroundings. I thought, this is what London's like. Yeah,
and it's funny, isn't it? Because we all we all went for texts that were quite nuanced and actually in some ways quite negative. I mean, I think we all felt a great love for London when we came together, and yet we wanted to focus on the whole thing and not write this kind of rose-tinted nostalgic view, but actually to take all these views from across the years about what a complex and dense and in some ways potentially nasty place it is, which I think gives it real depth as a cycle.
That might help me bring me on to Ray, because I know Ray wrote the very first little preludium to the cycle, text by Richard Devizes from the 12th century, which starts, "I do not at all like that city."
I think we have this interesting discussion about what poem to start a song cycle. But when I came across it, I thought it was quite nice because we kind of almost like a wrong-footed audience. Because I think when people come and hear it, they will expect to like a song cycle to sing the praises of London. Then I think it would be quite nice to open the song cycle with something quite negative, so kind of get people to say, what the hell is going on? I think it kind of set up a kind of expectation, and I think one of the things that for me is the most amazing things through the project is that when we go to the first rehearsal to hear the complete cycle, for me anyway, to hear all the other songs by the other 3 composers, oh my God, I mean, it was unplanned. It was just, we didn't actually talk about what we're going to write, what style, because, we have very different style. But in the sense that it just all fits so well together. All the songs, they kind of flow into one another, and there's a sense of drama from the beginning till the end. It works so beautifully. I just don't know how we actually did it. It was just it was a little miracle, I think.
Wonderful. Good. I can see a message, by the way, from Julia Kwan in the lovely to see you, Julia. Good memories at the concert. Before I'm going to get reactions from Nick and Graham and Ken and John in a second, but this is the time, any audience, do put any questions you have, or anybody in particular you'd like to ask about any part of the project, or you'd like some more information about something. Do now is the time to type it in the chat, and I will try to oblige. Nick's just popped up on my screen, so that seems a good moment to get how is that for you, watching that back, apart from the fact that we haven't aged a day?
Not a single, in fact the opposite, quite the opposite. It makes me really want to sing it all again. Really, I might be sending you a private message after this saying, you said you want to resurrect some of these songs, please use me. I'll be available, because we all are at the moment. It was really lovely to hear it, and really to echo the same things that other people have said, that the way that it became something connected rather than a set of individual songs was not something that, because I think, I'm trying to remember, I think it's only If London Could Speak where we all sing together, and so there would be no discernible reason to think that it would feel all connected, certainly from the singer's perspective, but yeah, it just seems to. And again, to echo what Beth was saying, that to be able to turn to the composer in the middle of a recording session potentially, and to or before you sing the concert, and be able to ask those questions, and in fact, I was thinking, and this is not to do myself a disservice at the time, but I feel like I would be able to do that process with even more maturity now, to feel less pressure, and to just ask the questions more as a duo, like you would with an accompanist, rather than just to feel like and this is not how anybody made me feel, it's just something I'm realizing as I remember back to it, how you feel like there is a right way, and with this, that wasn't the case. There was no right way. It was the way that we worked it out together that became something special.
Hooray! This is really music to my ears, because this is just how we like to work. That's lovely. Thank you very much. I've got I just want to hear from Graham, because I know you talked about your Carol Ann Duffy setting, which of course very evocative of 1989, and that is a song I've done quite a few times in various concerts since the project. How was that for you watching back?
Well, I mean, in addition to everything that's been said, it also rather makes me pine to make some live music again. It's wonderful. I mean, there's so much about this project that was different from your standard commission, whatever that might mean to each of us. But the fact that, it wasn't just one composer and it wasn't just one set of performance. And, for me, I'm sure the other composers agree, particularly when it comes to setting texts, I find I have to really kind of live with that text for quite a long time before I've even contemplated how you might then set it. And of course, we have to remember as composers that these texts exist in their own right. So for us to then choose to set them to music, it's quite, to have the audacity to say, yes, I think this needs to be set to music because it's not good enough as it is on its own. It's a pretty bold statement to go and do as a composer, but it's been going on for millennia, so we can take comfort from that. But I think I love exploring different texts, and I liked particularly with this project the fact that we were each aware of what texts were being set. We had this kind of compendium, and then we chose which ones we wanted to do. And it was really fascinating to see the building blocks along the way, and see how people were writing and responding to each of these texts, and then the final product as we came up with it. But yeah, maybe there needs to be another project in 5 years' time for poems that have been written since the time that we premiered this, and maybe we'll all view London in a different way post-corona.
Yeah. I mean, actually, that comes to, I see Maddie. Hello, Maddie. Nice to see you. I was asked a question about the future of Voices of London. That's exactly what might be in my mind. I mean, I'd love to be able to use some of the singers who did these first performances and first recordings and things, maybe as mentors and things. But I'd love to get some more young singers learning the songs that exist, and also commission some perhaps new songs that, it's about telling the story. We are Song in the City, so it's meant to be about, song in the now as much as in the past. Great. And I need to come to Ken and perhaps John. Ken, would you mind saying, how was it for you to work on this, coming into this project?
Yeah, well, I remember we spoke about the recording for quite a long time in advance. And then we were talking about various different venues. And when you let me know that you'd managed to get Milton Court for us, I was delighted, because it's a hall we've recorded in a lot with live concerts. But we can't often get in there to do recording sessions because the cost is so prohibitive to most projects. And so to have the opportunity to do a recording session where you have much more freedom to where to put the microphones and so on than in a live concert was superb. I'd been in recording sessions of projects that had multiple new commissions with Thalia Meyer's Spectrum series in the past, but not sessions where the composers were so present at the sessions. And so the vibe, I was just trying to recall the vibe at those sessions, and it was a very definite vibe. And it's really interesting tonight to hear the backstory of all the things that went on before I became involved. And the way I would define it is to say that there was a vibe of just kind of vibrancy, of it all being very modern, and there being a kind of great kind of collegiate atmosphere. Everyone seemed to be really buying into the project. So it was a huge pleasure to work on. I went through the session sheets today, and I got some stats at the risk of boring people, but as I said, it was recorded almost 5 years ago to the day, 17th and 18th of July. We recorded it in 4 3-hour sessions, so 12 hours of recording, 162 takes, and 6 microphones were used. That's all the stats I'm going to bore you with, but
I must say you were always marvellous at just, working around us, because, that we were constantly changing singers and composer, and you just were marvellous the way you just made it all work. How is that 162 takes? Is that good going?
That's pretty normal going, I think. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, I'm always slightly reluctant to just say numbers like that out loud, because musicians in particular start to go, oh my God, that sounds like a lot of takes. But, this is normal.
It was probably the poor pianist who was there for all the sessions. Good, and that brings me on to John. I wonder if John and I sort of talked about this project a long time, and John introduced me to Ken. Thank you for that. John, where are you?
Well, it brings back very happy memories, like Ken, just of the collaboration that went on in the studio. I think if I remember back to the first day, I can just remember the relief at finding everyone was so well prepared. And it's clear now that so much had gone on in advance of the recording sessions that made everything so straightforward from the production point of view. And even having the composers present, and I say that because it's not always the case, you can experience situations where composers want to change things as you go through recording sessions. And that can become a production nightmare in terms of time available, and also controlling takes at a later stage. But I remember that vibrancy, as Ken mentions, and the genuine creativity during all of the days. Did we do 2 days? I think it was, wasn't it? And it was just a wonderful time. And I too am very proud of this, and I've got my album out today, and I've had a good listen through to it, and enjoyed it very much. It's definitely one that's a keep. And as everyone has said, it'll be lovely to do more as London keeps evolving, of course. So this cycle could keep evolving. I mean, it would be great to consider that 5 years on, again, we could create something new that reflected London as it is then, as it will be then even.
It's wonderful to hear you describe the situation everybody was in, which is they felt like they were equal contributors to the project, whether they be a composer, singer, pianist, even the poets. I mean, Graham reminded me of something that, actually, a project like this, living poets, you have to get permission to set their writing, and everybody was very supportive, which brings me on to just to advertise, as we draw this one to a close, the event in 2 weeks' time, where we're going to talk about our Creative Madness in Song project, where in some ways our commissioning evolved to the next level, which was to have live poets writing for us with young composers. So I'm going to put in the chat 2 links now, which are to the one is to how to sign up to the next session, and also if you're able to donate to Song in the City going forward, there's a donation link for our website, and also on the Song in the City website you can buy a copy of the CD still. We still have a few left, but they're the links there in the chat. But that just leaves me just to say thank you so much to all of our wonderful composers, singers, and Ken and John and Will. Thank you so much for being here. I've got one final question from Dinah. It is clear to me that so much of the success of the wonderful project is the generosity of the people involved and the ethic of the collaboration. I've always felt welcomed and supported in everything I've done with Song in the City. Thank you, Dinah, for that. That's lovely. Good. So if anybody else has got any other questions, I shall... Oh.
Hello.
Hello.
Is that all right?
Hello, everyone. Beth, hello.
Sorry, hi. I thought it might be worth mentioning, because obviously we've all been interviewed and you've been generous enough to sort of give us all this credit. But actually, I think what hasn't been mentioned, which is probably sort of the linchpin of why this project was such a success, is this sense of collaboration and the fact that we were all in it together. But that was very much down to you, Gavin. And that's kind of the ethos that you have managed to foster throughout Song in the City and every project that you've done. So it mustn't go uncommented on.
You're right, very kind.
When Beth uses the term linchpin, you know that she's serious.
Who is in the name? It's great.
Anyway,
well, thank you very much, everybody. It's really lovely to see see your faces, even virtually. And I hope it won't be too long before we can all meet up again. But thank you. And I'll end the call now. Thank you. Goodbye.